Hi there, it's Nicole here for Simon Says Stamp with a custom background created with stamps, coloring, and then some stenciling over top using products from the new Fluttering by release just released this week from Simon Says Stamp, full of amazing Mother's Day and springtime type of product, as well as many other wonderful stamps, dies, stencils, watercolor cards, embellishments, so many amazing things. I'm going to start with a 4 by 5¼ inch piece of Bristol smooth cardstock. I'm using Bristol cardstock because I'm going to be creating my background by coloring it in with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, and this is the paper that I very highly recommend to use with your Zigs, especially if you've not been happy with how they look on other types of watercolor paper. The Bristol smooth cardstock, they just blend like butter and they are so amazing. I am using the 3 floral designs from the Simon Says Stamp and CZ Design Love You Mama stamp set. They have a very kind of whimsical feel to them, kind of an artistic type of flower, and I thought they would look really cool as a floral background. Almost like you trim down this floral piece of pattern paper, put it on your card, and add the greetings on top. That's really how I'm looking at this, only we're creating it custom, so it perfectly matches what the feel of the occasion is or whatever color you prefer. I'm simply going to fill this whole thing, stamping the flowers with VersaFine ONYX black ink. This is a great ink if you're going to be using the water-based markers. It won't bleed or anything like that, but you're going to get a fantastic black impression. Once this is completely covered, I am going to start coloring in my flowers. We want to create the base first, so the stamping, next comes the coloring, and then will be the stenciling on top. Really quick and easy, only 2 colors per, or 2 shades per color family. I have listed the colors as I'm coloring each flower in across either the top or the bottom of the screen, trying to keep it as much as I can out of the way of the coloring, but that way you can follow along and know exactly what I'm using where. I definitely went with bright colors, yellows, pinks, bright greens, purples, and even a little blue for my flowers here today. And I'm just going to work my way across the entire panel. I have sped it up quite a bit, but I did leave it all in so you can see exactly how this all comes together. I like to lay down the dark color of the Zig Clean Color Real Brush marker that I'm using first, and then I blend it out with a lighter marker. The lighter marker is going to pick up some of that dark color from the, or on the tip of the marker just from blending. So I usually keep a piece of scrap paper, which you can see to the right of the screen, to clean that tip of the brush off. Otherwise, you can maybe color too much of it too dark, if that makes sense, if a whole lot of that dark color gets on the tip of your marker. So I like to clean my markers or the tip of my lighter markers periodically to just kind of get rid of some of that dark ink. Beautiful shading. You can see how easy they blend on this paper. Just absolutely amazing. I love using these. The Zig markers are a water-based marker, so they are going to react with water. In fact, I'll be using the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen with the butterfly image from this Love You Mama stamp set a little bit later. And I wanted a lighter blue or aqua color than what I was getting with the markers. And you can achieve that by using either a water brush pen or the Wink of Stella clear pen to blend that out to a lighter color. It's really starting to come to life now. So super pretty. There are coordinating dies for all of these, so maybe you want to create a card and just have a beautiful floral border along the bottom edge, or something like that, you could very easily stamp a bunch of these on some Bristol Smooth cardstock if you're using zigs, and color them in and die cut them, or if you want to color them in with Copics, other watercolors, all kinds of things you can do here. I think these would look really cool if you stamped all of them with Versamark ink and heat embossed with white embossing powder, colored them in very similarly to what I'm doing here, but then added a color to the background with a water brush pen to kind of give it a beautiful watercolor wash and really make those flowers pop. That would be another great way to create a really interesting custom background. Just a few more flowers and then we're going to stencil over the top of the whole thing. I loved the background as it is, and you could totally use it this way, but I wanted to give it just a tiny bit of distressing. And there is a new stencil. There's a couple of new stencils in this Fluttering by Release, but the Tap Dance stencil I can tell already is going to get a ton of use, mostly because it's just one of those that's not real occasion or theme specific, and I think it's great for distressing. You might not necessarily think distressing with this kind of graphic type of card, but I like to do kind of a quote-unquote modern take on distressing. So instead of anything dark or adding tons of ink on top of this, we're just going to stencil through this Tap Dance stencil with some Twisted Citron, which is a really bright color of Distress Oxide ink, right over the top of this. You can see those little holes. They're kind of all different sizes. Really, really fun. I'm going to lift that up and make sure that I'm getting some good coverage. I'm going right over the top of the flowers. I'm not worrying at all about that. I want all of this layer. Now, down in this bottom right corner, I didn't really feel like I got enough distressing, nor did I at the top. The way I positioned the stencil to begin with, I just felt like I didn't get as much coverage as I wanted. Don't be afraid to flip that stencil around and add more if you need to. The beauty of this particular stencil, it's not so perfect that you have to keep it exactly the way it is. You can kind of move it around to get that distressing the way you want it to look. We're ready now to move on to the sentiment. I'm going to stamp the outline word Mom from the Love You Mama stamp set on some Bristol Smooth cardstock and color this in with some zig markers as well. We're using the pinks here. So the pink and sugared almond pink, and the darker at the bottom, light at the top. Again, constantly cleaning the tip of that marker so that I don't drag too much of that darker ink color to the top of the letter. I want that ombre effect of light to dark. Once this is all colored in, I'm going to use the coordinating Love You Mama die. And what's awesome about this stamp set, I mentioned it earlier that there's dies for the flowers, there's dies for Mama, there's dies for the mom, and you can, I think there's even one for the Love You Mama sentiment. So you can really customize this with whatever greeting you want. Maybe you make a whole bunch of these backgrounds and you use a whole bunch of these different sentiments and send these out to your mom friends, your mother-in-law, all kinds of people. I think this would just really make a fantastic set of cards. Maybe you use thank you greetings instead. Lots and lots of different ways to use this background. I obviously am creating a Mother's Day themed card, but this would really work for any occasion. Once I have die cut the word Mom, I really didn't want to adhere it directly to my background because I think it gets lost a little bit into that busy background. To kind of work with this, I'm going to add stick it adhesive to both sides of a little piece or a little scrap of fun foam. You guys have probably seen me do this before if you've watched my videos. It's one of my favorite ways to add a bold sentiment, whether it's a die cut sentiment or it's a stamped and die cut sentiment. It's one of my favorite ways to add that to a card to really make it the focal point of the design. And by popping it up, it just helps it stand out from a busy background. But because I've already die cut the greeting, I'm instead going to die cut the word mom from this fun foam that's backed both sides with stick-it adhesive. I'm just going to run that through my Spellbinders Platinum die cutting machine. Pop this out. Again, just make sure all those little inside pieces are out of there. Remove the backing paper from the back of this and figure out where I want to put it on my card. You could also go ahead and remove the backing paper from the front first and add the colored mom sentiment to that if you want to. But I did the back first, removed the other side of the backing paper on the front, and then positioned the word mom right on top. And you can tell even just the difference between laying that flat on the background before and having it popped up with a little bit of foam, fun foam now. It just makes a huge difference. For the rest of the sentiment, I'm going to stamp the phrase, "So grateful for you," also from the Love You Mama stamp set, on some black cardstock using Versamark ink and heat emboss that with some white embossing powder. I'll trim this into a thin strip, and I do have to tell you, I stamped the sentiment way too close to the top of the cardstock here the first time I did it, and when I trimmed it, it was a little uneven and it bothered me. So actually from this little strip I'm going to trim down here in a minute, I used the other half of it and stamped the sentiment again, used my white embossing powder, trimmed it down, added some 1/8 inch score tape to the back of it, and I'm going to pop it underneath, right underneath the dimensional die cut greeting. So you can see here it's just way too close to the top with too much black space at the bottom, at least for me it was. So I just redid that. I'm going to stamp the butterfly on some Bristol Smooth cardstock now as well, and I'm going to switch to a couple of different colors than I used for the background for the butterfly. This is going to be the cobalt blue and light blue, and this is where I'm going to take that Wink of Stella clear glitter brush pen that I was talking about earlier and blend those colors out into the rest of the wing, and then some gray here for the butterfly's body. That Wink of Stella is just going to give it a nice clear light touch to the end of the butterfly wings. Now, just like the greeting, I don't want to put the butterfly directly on the card base because it's going to get lost in the design. So I'm going to do the same thing I did. I added, or just from the rest of that piece of fun foam that had stick-it adhesive on it from the greeting, I die cut the butterfly. I'm going to pop the butterfly in place, remove backing paper, and then replace my die cut colored butterfly right there sitting on top of the letter M. The last thing I really have to do here is take this whole panel and adhere it to a white top fold card base. I'm just putting some nice strong adhesive on my card base, centering that. It's going to have a nice little white mat all the way around. Open up my card, and from the Love You Mama stamp set, I thought the sentiment, "You will always be the woman who I aspire to become," is just beautiful. So I'm going to stamp that on the inside of the card with some VersaFine ONYX black ink, and that will finish up my card design. Thanks for joining me today for this custom background created with stamps and layered with a stencil. The supplies I used to create this card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.